Eastern Conference team. And for those who don't know, I live on the East Coast, so I am a little bit more favorable to showing them love. Also, I believe that the national media tends to drive a lot of narratives for the West Coast teams, your Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers, Clippers, Phoenix. They tend to skew very much West Coast. So I, as a responsible NBA evaluator slash analyst online, think that the Eastern Conference deserves a little bit more love. And I think in a year like this one, where a lot of people are writing off the Eastern Conference because of some of the talent that's coming in injured, I want to still show love to what's going on in the Eastern Conference because I think there's some good basketball going out there. That's just my personal opinion. And the Miami Heat are playing themselves some good basketball. They're playing themselves some good basketball. Norman Powell has them boys hooping. He's already coming in and asserted himself as the top scorer for this team, averaging 21.5 points per game. They've got what? What's this? 7 guys averaging double figures. I want to take this time to point out that this is a real bounce back start for Jaime Jaquez, who a lot of people were really worried about last year, having a little bit of a drop off after having a really strong rookie season. Jaime Jaquez 15.7 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, and a guy who is just been competitive on the defensive end, been a really good ball mover, scorer. Him and Simone Fontecchio off the bench. And Simone Fontecchio, he's a guy who was solid with the Detroit Pistons as well. And I think Detroit's going to miss him a little bit. But Jaime Jaquez and Simone Fontecchio off the bench are combined for 29.4 points off that Miami Heat bench. They have been solid for this team through the first 3 games. Norman Powell is averaging 24 points. He was averaging 21.5 before this most recent game. Had to adjust my notes there. Also, Davion Mitchell. I know he's only averaging 9 points, but 8.3 assists. And something that stood out to me too, and I want to make sure it's still sticking. Davion Mitchell is shooting 37.5% from beyond the arc. I know it's not on crazy volume, but I like that he's shooting the 3 ball at a pretty decent clip. Him and Norman Powell are two of the better shooters on this team so far. And Simone Fontecchio also 50% from beyond the arc on 5 attempts per game. They've got a couple of guys that are really getting that shot up there. Nikola Jovic also 40% from beyond the arc on 4 attempts per game. Let me show you some of the team stats that I thought were really important to what they've been doing so far in the beginning part of the season. Miami Heat, number 5 in points per game with 127.3. Rebounds per game, tied with the San Antonio Spurs, 51.3. Miami also, let me get to the part that I thought was really, really important. If I'm not mistaken, here we go. Net rating of 12. Next closest, or the 12 is second in the NBA behind the San Antonio Spurs. They're at 17.4. That net rating is really built off of the fact that they've been blowing folks out with the fact that Victor Wembanyama just looks like an absolute menace. So, top 5 in net rating, top 5 in defensive rating behind the New York Knicks, the San Antonio Spurs, and at number 1 in defensive rating, doubles. This is not their segment, so I'm not gonna go too crazy about it. But I'm just saying the Miami Heat are number 4 in defensive rating behind the New York Knicks, who have real strong defensive personnel on the team with guys like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby on that roster. San Antonio Spurs, who are really effective as a defensive unit, and they lean on Victor Wembanyama as a rim protector. And then doubles, who I don't know what's making them so crazy as a defensive team, but I'm also not mad at it. So, hey, do what you want. But here's what I also want to touch on. Miami Heat, 3rd in fast break points with 24 per game behind the Toronto Raptors and the San Antonio Spurs. Miami Heat, also behind the Toronto Raptors and San Antonio Spurs in points in the paint with 63 per game. The San Antonio Spurs, mind you, we just saw Victor Wembanyama go off, dominating in the paint. They have 66. Toronto, 70. That team can't shoot threes like that, so they are kind of having to kill folks from the paint. The Miami Heat are playing up and down basketball. The Miami Heat are third in points per game in shot, catch and shoot opportunities behind the Charlotte Hornets and Golden State Warriors. That's insane. The Miami Heat are number one in pace of play by a decent margin at 112.3, with the next closest being the Toronto Raptors at 108.8. This team is doing it the nitty gritty Miami way. The only difference is that they're hitting the three ball, but they're relying on defense and athleticism. We are going to punish you on the glass. We are going to rebound at a high level. We are going to defend at a high level. Davion Mitchell is looking like one of the best point of attack defenders in the league right now, hounding guys in the backcourt. The positional versatility that they have with guys like Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Jovic, Simone Fontecchio, Andrew Wiggins gives them real range defensively to play crazy passing lanes. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to double check this because I know they're not top 5 in this stat, but I do think they're up there in... Where are they? Okay, so they're not as high as I thought they were in deflections. But you would think they are with the kind of range they have in terms of some of the guys they have on the team. But neither here nor there, because that's not necessarily important. But this Miami team is just doing it. They're just doing it the way that I feel like the underrated versions of the Miami squads have always done it. You look back at past versions of Miami where, like, they just didn't have, like, this glaring superstar player. And I think Bam Adebayo is still an all-star in this league. Don't get me wrong. Still a walking defensive player of the year caliber guy on a night-to-night basis. But I remember a time when, like, Josh Richardson had to average, like, 18-plus points per game for this team. I remember times when this team had to rely just on being a gritty, win in the clutch, win with physicality basketball team. That's kind of what the whole premise of what the Jimmy Butler era of the Miami Heat was built on, to be honest, as well, right? And it seems like they've just kind of gotten back to it. Bam developed as an on-ball player last year offensively, and I think that's really helped his game. But you just don't see a takeover guy in Bam Adebayo. And so he needs somebody on that perimeter really to lead that charge. And that guy so far has been Norman Powell. And the question you have to ask yourself now is, like, with Norman being as good as he is, Jaime Jaquez and Simone Fontecchio stepping up as the way they are coming off that bench, Davion Mitchell is solid at the point of attack for defense. Like, is Tyler Herro's redundancy with Norman Powell something that actually makes him more expendable? As we discussed on the very first episode of this podcast, Tyler Herro is coming into this year both injured, aka unavailable, and he's a guy who's in a bit of a conundrum right now because he is signed through the rest of the season. I believe he's signed through next season as well, but he's up for contract extension negotiations. And Norman Powell is, if I'm not mistaken, under contract himself at a pretty favorable number, might I add, that makes it where if they're redundant, what portion of you holds on to Tyler Herro when you could potentially use him as an expiring contract trade chip moving forward? Excuse me. Norman Powell actually is going to become an unrestricted free agent this upcoming summer, which can either be a net positive or a net negative for the Miami Heat. The net positive is you might be able to get him on a more favorable deal than the 20.4 million you're owing him right now. The negative of it is that you might end up watching him walk away in free agency. I think all of that says that I don't necessarily know if Tyler Herro is quote unquote expendable just yet. But if Norman Powell plays as well as he is, if this Miami Heat team looks good offensively the way they have, with having the kind of positional versatility they have, playing up and down basketball, moving the ball around, killing in transition, not really having any real weaknesses on the defensive end, maybe outside of Norman Powell, who is not an elite defender by any means, but I think is a much better defensive player than Tyler Herro at the shooting guard position. Do the Miami Heat take the opportunity to maybe move Tyler Herro while he's at an interesting crossroads, and also avoid re-upping on a player at a position that has become quite questionable over the last couple of years? And more importantly, this last offseason was so indicative of that, right? Like, Utah basically traded Colin Sexton for a bag of chips. He has been really effective for the Charlotte Hornets so far through 3 games. But as the score first point guard, shooting guard, his value wasn't that high, despite the fact that he's such an effective player. Quentin Grimes just snapped against the Charlotte Hornets and was a really solid player for the Philadelphia 76ers last year. Yet he's on a qualifying offer right now because he has an upside as a defensive player, but again, he fits an archetype that is still this score first oriented 2 guard. Cam Thomas is the poster child for what happened this past offseason, having to sign the qualifying offer for a Brooklyn Nets team who really don't got anybody else to give the money to, yet they didn't even feel comfortable signing him to a long-term deal. So the precedent is set that, like, Tyler Herro is kind of in a tough spot. Now, the other side of it is that he has a good representation as far as the positive side of that as well, in somebody like Tyrese Maxey, who, fellow Kentucky guard, made the All-Star team, being a score first point guard, a score first chuck 'em up point guard. I don't think Tyler Herro is better than Tyrese Maxey. There's a lot of parts of me that don't think Tyrese Maxey is anywhere close to Tyler Herro, or excuse me, reverse that. I don't think Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, goodness gracious, this podcast is derailing. I don't think that Tyler Herro and Tyrese Maxey are in the same tier, regardless of whatever you would archetype them as. I think Tyrese Maxey is that much better, and I think the gap is that much wider. All that to say, now that I've regathered myself, Tyler Herro is somebody that I think might really end up facing the trade block. I would not be surprised if the Miami Heat were taking phone calls for Tyler Herro as a potential trade chip to add more depth, and more importantly, if not depth, to add more draft capital, because this team really lacks in that department due to some of the moves they've made in the past, where Miami is in a really weird spot in terms of where they've been able to draft and what they've been able to do in the draft as far as the kind of treasure trove they do, or in this case don't have. Tyler Herro, coming off an All-Star year, still has another year or 2 on his contract before another team would have to pay him. Maybe you move off of him before things get too lucrative, or before you get in a situation similar to the Jonathan Kuminga dilemma, where you almost kind of have to sign him in order to later make a different move in a different, place and time where it's not as advantageous as moving him right now. But Miami's good, man. Miami's really good. They play fast. They defend all 94 feet. They are hard-nosed. They've got a go-to scorer in Norman Powell, who has taken what he did last year with the LA Clippers and just continuing to ride that high horse. Bam Adebayo is looking really good. He's averaging a double-double right now. That bench has been really productive. Miami, another team kind of similar to that Memphis Grizzlies team I was talking about earlier on in the pod. Like, if they make the playoffs, like, you do not want to see this team in the first round. I'm not saying you're gonna lose if you're the New York Knicks or if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers. Actually, you can make the argument that the Cleveland Cavaliers actually might lose because the Cleveland Cavaliers, their biggest issue is they struggle with physicality. They admitted that after the very first game against the New York Knicks that they struggled with the physicality of the Knicks on the interior. And here we are with the Miami Heat as one of the best scoring teams in the paint so far this year. So maybe if the Heat run into a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, maybe that series is a little different than what it just seems like it should be on paper, right? If they face a team like crosstown rival, the Orlando Magic in the first round, like that series could go the distance. I'm just saying that, again, small sample size. My thoughts on this will build up as we go throughout the season, but Miami is this team that I'm keeping a real close, like, magnifying glass on. I'm not watching them day to day, but they're a team that I'm going to keep a real good, like, radar on because they're a squad that I feel like if they're in the mix for that top 8 in the Eastern Conference when the season is over, they're a team that a lot of people are going to shake their head and be like, dang. This is not going to be the kind of first round we were hoping for where we could kind of scoot along if you're a number 1, number 2, or number 3 seed. Like if the Heat get anywhere between that 6 through 8 and you got to face a Miami, you got to face a New York, or you got to face a Cleveland, or you got to face a Orlando. Shoot, if you got to face Atlanta, like I think Miami and against against all 4 of those teams, I think all 4 of those series go at least 6 games. I'm not going to lie to you. Just going off of what I've seen from the Miami Heat so far.